رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ومولانا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم إلى يوم الدين. We're speaking about Surah al-Alaq, and we were saying that this is one of those surahs that has lots of reward. If a person recites it, the tradition from Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam mentions that Allah will resurrect him as a shaheed, as a martyr. When you look at this surah, a few things come to mind. One is, this is, according to the major opinion, majority, that this is the first chapter and the first verse of the Holy Quran. Is, Iqra. That was the first word from the Holy Quran. Two, when the Prophet receives the message, as followers of Ahlul Bayt, we say he was already a prophet. We say that in Ba'atha, when this surah comes, Mab'ath, his prophethood gets commenced, his official prophethood to teach the people starts. Or else that position that he had, he was already a prophet. I mean, when you look at the story of the prophets, or our prophet before, you have to start about the other world. Rasulullah was a prophet from the other world. He was actually a teacher of the other prophets. You have in tradition that the Prophet and his family even teach the angels how to do tasbih of Allah in the other world. So therefore, we have a very different interpretation about the maqam and position of Prophet Muhammad than some of the other madahib. Some of them say when this surah came, for example, the first verse came, he was surprised, he was afraid. He asks his wife for help to make things, be clear for him. That what is going on, for example. Sometimes even have that he gets depressed, for example. We don't believe in all of that. We said that he knew he was already a prophet. But to be official and to start that mission and to commence it, that's what we call mab'ath. And if you ever want to start talking about Rasulullah, you should talk about him in the other world, as how Ziyarat al-Jami'ah mentions, that they are muhtaqeen, they're around the arsh of Allah in a circle. Then Allah did minnat, and Allah did favor to us and brought the Prophet and Imam Ali and Sayyidah Fatima, Imam Hassan, Imam Hussein to this world. That's why each one of them, when they are born, they have a miraculous birth. They speak when they're newborns, because this is not a normal individual that is being born. This is Rasulullah or Imam Ali coming to this world, who already had position, already had maqam. So therefore, that's very important for us to understand about the Surah Iqra. The other thing that you notice in this surah, it talks about salat. The surah, it talks about prayer. And you're asking me, wait a minute, isn't this the first surah, for example? Then how was there prayer? Because the command for prayer came much later, right? So how does that work? And if you look in the books of history, Rasulullah would do salat already. He would perform salat before the salat became wajib. And sometimes you see in the tradition that he would be in Mecca, for example, himself, Imam Ali alayhi salam and Lady Khadija, and they would be doing salat. Because this is as we said, he already has that maqam and position. He's not going to wait until that official salat becomes wajib. That's for me and you. But this is Rasulullah's worship. How it was the worship of the prophets before. Because they would also pray. They would also have siyam, for example. So this is another interesting thing about this surah. So we're going to go here in this verse number 8, if you have your phones available, and you promise not to check social media, you can open it. Maybe if Kazem Agha can go around looking if they're going through social media and report them to me. أَرَأَيْتَ الَّذِي يَنْهَى. We're at number 9. Have you seen the one who forbids? So, abadan idha salla, maybe this is Abu Jahl, because Abu Jahl he saw the Prophet praying, and again, we said if it's not official salat yet, and he wanted to harm the Prophet, he wanted to hurt him. But this verse isn't only for, say, Abu Jahl, for example, it's for others. But this is an example. أَرَأَيْتَ الَّذِي يَنْهَى. Have you seen the one who forbids? Here the one who forbids, like Abu Jahl, like the likes of Abu Jahl. Abadan idha salla can refer to the Prophet. Our Prophet, the Abd, when he prays. So here we see that sometimes there are individuals who we call them mana'ul khair. They are a prohibitor and barrier of good. Can you give me an example of someone who is mana'ul khair, for example? Like somebody wants to give charity and somebody comes in front and says, no, don't do it. You're giving that person too much money. They once, it's very interesting, came to Ayatollah al-Uzma Burujerdi. Some of you will not like this story. Some of you will like this story. Ayatollah al-Uzma Burujerdi was the supreme marja taqlid from Iran and Iraq, from the Shias. And when he would sit down next to somebody, he was very generous. And a person sat down next to him, sometimes he would give them so much money when that person was poor, he would give them enough money to buy a house, sometimes. Imagine the generosity and the amount of money he had, that he would give him enough. So this person comes in front of Ayatollah, and they were very careful. The people around Ayatollah Burujerdi, they said they're very careful to make sure no one sits next to him because he would get so much money. The poor, they kind of blocked them so they wouldn't. So then he comes to Ayatollah Burujerdi, this poor person sits next to him and complains and tells him, I need money. And he gives him a lot of money. And then the people around him, as we said, some are mana or khair. Some people want to prohibit. Why do you give him charity? Why'd you help him out? Why'd you do this, for example? And then he comes to bash this person. He tells Ayatollah Burujerdi, did you know this person smokes? This person you gave all this money, cigar here, he smokes. Ayatollah Burujerdi says he smokes. Give him this much money for his cigarettes also. He give more money, for example. Because back then, I'm telling you, I said someone liked this story, because back then smoking, we didn't have the information as we have today. He thought it was a need. He said, oh, he has more need. Today it's much different because, it causes cancer, what it can do with lung cancer, throat cancer. I have to put all this, and it's much different. 2026, much different than, say, 1950s, 60s, where we didn't have that information and all these companies are just promoting. So you see, some are mana ul khair, and some are the opposite, are generous. Even for other things, they'll give money. Hopefully we can learn from this. Sometimes we have children. You see, don't only think this is like Abu Jahl trying to prohibit the Prophet. Sometimes we have that attribute like Abu Jahl. Our son son wants, or daughter wants to go to Hawza, for example. Or why do you want to go to Hawza? We don't have anyone as a Hajjah in our family, for example. How can we explain this to the family? Yet he wants to go and spread Islam, and it's one of the best things. The tradition says if you make one person, guide them one person, it's better than what the sun shines upon. What the entire sun shines on, one person is guided. So sometimes it comes to this, or sometimes it might even come to Hajj, or sometimes it might come to Kaaba, or sometimes, God forbid, even hijab. Daughter wants to wear hijab, for example, and parents say, no, why do you do that? Don't allow them. So we have to take this verse and say, as parents and as friends, sometimes we are those who prohibit people, and instead of encouraging them. And this can go to the higher forms, when they want to even go and defend, for example, their religion in the battlefield. And this is a very hard test for parents, for example. A child comes and would say, for example, I want to defend my religion, I want to defend my people. And then we would prohibit him. Very difficult tests. So there are very different positions that I want you to think about, that how would we react as parents that we have position and how far would we allow our kids to be religious? A lot of parents today want them to be a little bit religious. But if they're too religious, that's not good. He's going to have a big, thick beard now. He's not going to shake hands to anyone. Or sister might wear a really, good hijab, or might even cover parts of the face. That's too religious, for example. Or they might end up going all the way to Qom and Najaf. Who's going to stop them now? They keep going and going, for example. Somebody stop them, talk some sense into them. Unfortunately, a lot of parents, they like a little bit of Islam. Why? So, for example, they don't get into haram relationships. Why, for example, they don't. But now they want to get their money and pay homes. Now they want to help masjid. Or they want to give their own money to somebody else. Now the parents are like, no, don't do that. Help yourself. So a lot of times we can, as parents, be like this verse. And we are prohibiting people to reach kamal. Prohibiting people to reach the highest that they can. And these are difficult tests. I'm not saying it's easy as parents to allow one's son to go, for example, in the path of Allah, for example. That's very difficult. But we have to think of this verse. أَرَأَيْتَ الَّذِي يَنْهَى. What would be like that person that does nahi when something good is going to happen for them? Because at the end, they're reaching Allah. Abadan إِذَا صَلَّى. A slave, a servant, who he praises a prophet. أَرَأَيْتَ إِنْ كَانَ عَلَى الْهُدَى. Have you seen if he is upon guidance? أَوْ أَمَرَ بِالتَّقْوَى. Or he commands on the good, on taqwa. He commands on righteousness. أَرَأَيْتَ إِنْ كَذَّبَ وَتَوَلَّى. Have you seen him if he denies and turns away? One of the ulama, they went to visit one of the scholars and says, give me advice. Give me, good advice. He gave him advice, ayah number 14. This is one of those ayahs that many people have in their homes. If you go in Iran, for example, some people have this verse at home. أَلَمْ يَعْلَمْ بَأَنَّ اللَّهَ يَرَى. Do they not know that Allah is watching? Do you not know that Allah sees? This is verse number 14. And this is, again, another place that we have to talk about. That when we talked about the previous part of the surah, it talked about that person that does istaghna, for example, or does tuqyan, yatqa. Remember we talked about tuqyan, when they transgress, like that river that gets out of boundaries and starts, for example, flooding people's homes. We call that tuqyan. They have too much money, they have too much wealth, they have too much power, they do tuqyan. We said the cause of that was istighna, how the verse said istighna. They think they are self-sufficient. They think there's something. The other part you can relate is why a person does tuqyan in the previous verses is because they don't know Allah's watching. Because they don't live life that relationship with God is an active relationship. And throughout the entire day, they are living with God. God is watching them, and they are thinking of Him. We call this, and the Quran also says, هُوَ مَعَكُمْ أَيْنَمَا كُنْتُمْ. He is with you wherever you are. This is called ma'iyat. Ma'a in Arabic means togetherness. We are trying to develop togetherness with Allah in Shahr Ramadan and outside of Shahr Ramadan. That I live with Allah. Not that I just believe I have a creator and I pray and that's it. Between these prayers that I do in the morning, noon, all this time, I really believe that Allah is watching me. And Imam Hussein alayhi salam mentioned that one of the easiest, what made it easy for him, when he took Hazrat Ali Asghar and put his holy blood in the sky, and they say that in the Maqtal, it says he threw the blood of Hazrat Ali Asghar to the sky. It never came down, but the fact that Allah is watching makes it easier. If you truly believe that Allah is watching you, and Allah tests you even with your baby, even with your infant, and you throw his blood in the sky, for example, that watching of Allah will allow this test to become easy. But if you live life in a way that you think Allah doesn't really exist, is colorless for you, then every little test will be difficult for you. Traffic you'll hit, you'll be upset, you'll be saddened by traffic. There'll be turbulence in the plane, you'll be scared, for example. Every little bump in life, you'll be scared because Allah isn't watching you. But if I see right now Allah is watching me and watching my sacrifice, and you see today how many brave people come in the streets in Iran today, and how they're fighting against oppression. And you see why? Because they believe that Allah is watching them. Or else a few of us going out in the streets and there would be explosions, would run in the house. Those sounds are very, very scary for us. But if a person reaches this maqam and position that Allah is watching me, Allah is in control of everything, and He is going to take care of me, just like a child puts his hand. You ever see a child, you separate that baby from mother, begins to cry, but place that mother on the chest, place that child on the chest of the mother, it gets soothed, is calm. We are the same way. If you develop that ma'iyyat with Allah, we can have the most difficult tests, most difficult trials, but I believe Allah is watching me all the time. And Allah is becoming satisfied with me. And my maqam is becoming higher and higher. I believe genuinely, sincerely, that the tests of Allah are nothing but tarfiyah maqam, that I'm reaching a high position. This is something easy said. I don't say I have reached it, but it is very difficultly implemented. That I live a very connected life with Allah, and I believe that He is watching me, and therefore I am serving Him. I don't believe that others are watching me. This is the difference that we have. We are always afraid of others watching me. مثلا میگیم زشته, for example, داره نگاه میکنه مثلا. Why? Because others are watching me. I'm afraid more of makhluq and creation than the Creator. I always think, I should make sure my clothes is good, for example. This is good. These are good things. It's not bad. But then the Creator of all of this, I don't have haya, I don't have mannerisms, I don't have modesty when it comes to Allah. So what we are trying to gain in Shahr Ramadan, and maybe from these surahs, that we understand one of the roots of tuqyan is believing that Allah doesn't watch us, that Allah doesn't see us. Sami Allahu liman hamida. Right? In salat we say, when we get up, Allah is hearing you. Allah hears the one who prays Him. Allah is watching the one who sacrifices for Him. Allah watches the one who gives charity. Allah watches the one who is kind to children, who fights against oppression. So therefore, this is what we're trying to develop, which is called ma'iyyat, us with Allah, togetherness. We're always, and we'll never, that person will never have wahsha, that person will never be alone. Kalla, it's not like this. The Quran says, لَإِن لَمْ يَنْتَهِ لَنَسْفَعًا بِالنَّاسِيَةِ. It's not like this. If he does not desist, we will surely drag him by the forelock. That tuqyan, at the end, what happens when a person transgresses? We take him by the nasiya. We take him by the front part of the head, the forelock. Many of us, men today don't have this forelock anymore. We lose it. When we're 30 years old, we become bald, for example. You can't grab us from here, but it's a figure of speech. Allah will, in the hereafter, they will grab us from here. Not those who are bad. Nasiyatan kadhiba khati'a. The nasiya that is lying, sinning forelock, for example. Maybe some say this part of the head, maybe literal, is where the decision-making part of the brain is, for example. So that is, nasiyatin kadhibatin khati'a. From here, maybe some say. فَلْيَدْعُوا نَادِيَ. We will call the angels of hell. سَنَدْعُ الزَّبَانِيَ. No, do not obey him. This last verse, because you listened, I will not say, because if I say it, it is wajib to do sujood. And it would be wajib upon me. Some say, even me, if I'm sitting here, yes, I will have to do sujood. You can read that verse 19 by yourself. But that verse 19 is one of the 4 verses of Holy Quran that you have to do sujood. You have to, as an ihtiyat, have a turba or something like the likes of that. And if you say it, yourself, you would do sujood. And it is also one of the verse that if a person is junub, if a person or a lady is excused from prayer, they cannot recite it. They cannot recite this verse. Some say the entire surah. Some maraja say this entire surah. If you're junub or if a person is excused from prayer, the entire surah they can't do. The opinion of Ayatul Sistan is just the verse. Some say that it's the surah, the entire surah sajda you can't recite, but it has respect. We ask Allah, inshallah, to make us of those who, inshallah, will believe that Allah is watching them, will live life that Allah is watching them. And we notice that most of our faults and mistakes and bad decisions we make is because we forget that Allah is watching us. Ya Allah, we ask you protection for the people of Iran and Lebanon and Gaza and the entire world, inshallah. To give victory to everyone who is fighting against oppression, inshallah. To make us courageous, to make us only fear Allah. Ya Allah, forgive those who have departed, forgive our sins, give shafa and heal all of those who are sick, and expedite the return of our Imam with a salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa shafa'a. I think he has to turn. Is it ready for Q&A?